Have you ever held something in your hands that felt dangerous? Not a weapon, not anything violent, just a piece of paper, a letter, one that wasn't supposed to exist, one that carried words so heavy they could alter everything you thought was real. What would you do if someone handed you a sealed envelope and said, "Burn this, don't read it, forget it ever existed"? Would you obey, or would your curiosity take over? Because that's exactly what happened to me. It was a quiet Sunday morning in Cedar Hills, Oregon. The kind of morning where the air smells like dew and the coffee feels warmer than usual. I was visiting my childhood home for the first time in years, a place filled with old furniture, family photos, and echoes from the past I thought I had long buried. Then, out of nowhere, my aunt pulled me aside. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed me a weathered envelope. She didn't look me in the eye. She didn't say much. Only, "Your mother left this for you, but she changed her mind. She told me to destroy it." Then she whispered, "But I couldn't." That's when I felt it, the chill, the kind that doesn't come from the wind, but from within. I stared at the letter for hours. It sat on the kitchen counter like a loaded secret, and my mind kept racing. What could be so important, yet so forbidden? What kind of truth was so unbearable that it had to be buried forever? I picked it up. It was light, too light to carry what it carried. I walked out back, the same backyard where I used to play as a kid, where birthdays were celebrated, where promises were made and forgotten. I lit a match, and that's when it happened. I hesitated. I couldn't do it. I couldn't burn it. Not yet. Not without knowing what my mother had written. Not without reading the words she feared I would see. Because somewhere deep down, I knew. Whatever was inside that letter wasn't just about her. It was about me. About who I really was. And I couldn't live the rest of my life not knowing. But here's the thing no one warns you about. When you go looking for hidden truths, you don't always like what you find. Some stories are locked away for a reason. Some secrets aren't meant to be told. Some letters are meant to burn. But I opened it anyway, and the moment my eyes caught the first sentence, everything changed. My breath caught in my throat. My hands went numb. And time, for a second, completely froze. Because the first thing I read wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't even an apology. It was a single, haunting line. And once you hear it, you'll understand why that letter should have never seen the light of day. If this story touches you in any way, give it a like right now. That's how YouTube knows you want more stories like this. And at the end, tell me, would you have done something different? I held the letter like it might burn me without a flame. It felt alive in my hands, warm, almost pulsing. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, like it had survived time itself. There was no return address, no seal, no explanation. Just my name on the front, in handwriting I couldn't place but felt strangely familiar. And that smell. It wasn't just dust. It smelled like memories, like a room that had been locked for decades and suddenly reopened. My hands trembled slightly, and I don't know if it was fear or anticipation. Maybe both. I remembered my aunt's voice in my head, almost a warning. "You need to burn this. Now." And she wasn't joking. Her eyes had a fear I'd never seen before. But how do you burn something that clearly carries a piece of your story? Something that, just by existing, whispers truths you were never meant to hear? I didn't open it right away. I placed it on the table, walked away, came back, sat down, stood up again. Every time I looked at it, it felt like the letter was looking back at me, like it was waiting for me to make a choice. And deep down, I think I already had. Because sometimes we don't open things just to know. We open them because a part of us already knows. And we need proof. That night, I lit a candle. I didn't turn on the lights. Something about the darkness made it feel safer. Like if I read the letter in the dark, the truth wouldn't hurt as much. Foolish, I know. But when you're about to uncover a secret buried for years, a forbidden story, logic doesn't matter anymore. I carefully unfolded the paper, and the creases cracked like old bones. And the first line? It wasn't anything dramatic. It simply said, "There's something you were never told." And in that moment, I stopped breathing. It was like those words reached inside me and pulled at everything I believed to be true. My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. And yet, I couldn't stop reading. I needed to know what had been hidden. I needed to understand why someone would go to such lengths to keep this away from me. The past was no longer in the past. It was here, now, in my hands. And it was about to bleed through everything I thought I knew. Because what followed that sentence was not just a secret, it was a confession, a revelation, one that would shatter more than just family silence, one that would drag memories out of hiding and expose them in ways I never asked for. The letter spoke of things I wasn't ready for: names, dates, decisions made in quiet hospitals, agreements signed behind closed doors, love that was lost, pain that was buried, and a truth so devastating it felt like betrayal. This wasn't just a letter. This was a turning point, a story forbidden to be told, a truth that had waited years to be found, a mystery letter carrying a past so hidden that even my own mother was afraid of what it would do to me. But now, it was too late. I had already read the first line, and once you read the beginning, you can't go back. I could barely hold the paper. My hands were trembling so much it felt like the truth inside that letter was radiating through my skin. The handwriting, it was unmistakable. It was hers. The way she curved her letters, the pressure of the ink, I knew it. My mother. And just that realization made my stomach twist. She had written this. She had chosen these words. And now, I was reading something she never wanted me to see. Line after line, it felt like pieces of my life, the life I thought I understood, were being broken apart. Between the crossed-out words and uneven margins, there were memories disguised as sentences, regrets, doubts, and then, suddenly, a phrase that stopped everything. You don't know who you really are. I read it once, then again, and again. Each time it hit harder. That one sentence didn't just surprise me. It split me. It questioned my entire identity. Who was I really? What did she mean? What had been kept from me all these years? I wasn't just reading a confession. I was standing in front of a mirror that no longer showed the reflection I knew. She wrote about the night I was born, but not like the stories she used to tell when I was younger. Not the warm, loving version filled with happy tears. No, this was different. Cold, clinical. She mentioned a hospital I'd never heard of, a doctor I didn't recognize, a decision made not by love, but by fear. She spoke about a man, not my father, or at least, not the one I grew up calling that. Someone else, a stranger, someone who never even knew I existed, and someone who, apparently, should have, because he was the one she had run from, the one she believed would ruin me. And there, almost hidden in the middle of the page, scribbled between two rushed lines, was the phrase that has haunted me ever since. I'm sorry. I hid you out of love. It's hard to explain what that did to me. How can someone hide your entire identity and call it love? Was it protection? Was it control? Was it fear disguised as sacrifice? Or was it something more painful? A truth that she couldn't carry, so she buried it in me. I felt a sharp sting behind my eyes. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or run, because suddenly I wasn't reading a letter anymore. I was unraveling, word by word, the person I thought I was, the one she raised, the one I believed I'd always been, began to disappear. This wasn't just a confession secreta. It was a betrayal wrapped in tenderness, a painful, twisted form of love, and that made it even harder to process. Because when love turns into a reason for hiding the truth, what do you believe in after that? And the worst part, the letter wasn't over yet. There were more pages, more truths, more pain. But before I could keep going, I just sat there, frozen, holding a version of my life I didn't ask for, but now couldn't escape from. I must have read that letter 20 times, maybe more. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't accept it. I thought reading it again would somehow make it make sense. That maybe, if I stared at the same words long enough, they'd change. That maybe I'd misunderstood something. That the pain I felt was just shock and not truth. But every time my eyes ran over those ink-stained lines, I felt like a little more of who I was, who I thought I was being peeled away. The room around me didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum of lies. The family photos on the wall looked staged. The childhood drawings I once thought were innocent suddenly felt like artifacts of a person I had never truly known. I sat on the edge of the couch, that letter crumpled in my hands, feeling like I had just been handed the script of someone else's life, and I had been cast in the lead role without ever knowing. There was a moment, a real moment, when I held that letter over the flame of the candle. I wanted it gone. I wanted to burn the words and the pain with them. I told myself that if I destroyed it, I could move on. I could pretend this Memoria Dolorosa never landed in my hands. That my pasado no resolvido could stay just that, unresolved. Because who would I be if I accepted what I had just learned? But I didn't burn it. I couldn't. Instead, I folded it, carefully, like it was something sacred, and tucked it inside a box I hadn't opened in years. The same box that once held birthday cards, dried flowers, and letters from a boy who used to love me. Now, it also held the truth. Ugly, painful, unwanted, but true. That letter wasn't just paper and ink. It was a pedido de perdón, a silent apology from someone who couldn't bring herself to speak the words aloud. It was everything she was too afraid to tell me face to face. A confession that carried the weight of years, maybe decades of guilt. And strangely, that made it even harder to hate her. I kept thinking, what kind of pain must she have carried all these years? What kind of fear would make a mother hide the truth from her own child? Maybe she thought she was protecting me. Maybe she just couldn't face what she had done. Maybe she thought love was enough. But love isn't the absence of truth, and that's what hurt the most. I didn't know what to do with all of it. With the letter, with the lies, with the love that now felt more like a wound than a comfort. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I also wasn't ready to let go of her. So I kept the letter, burned at the corners, folded with shaking hands, and sealed in silence. Because sometimes what we don't destroy becomes the only thing keeping us together. Sometimes the carta guardada is the last thread connecting us to who we used to be, even when it hurts to hold on to it. I've read that sentence so many times now that it feels etched into me, like it's part of my DNA. I see it when I close my eyes. I hear it in silence. I feel it in the pit of my stomach. That one line, the one that broke everything and rebuilt something else in its place. I'm sorry. I hid you out of love. There are words that don't leave you. Not because you hold on to them, but because they hold on to you. They become part of your internal soundtrack, looping over and over without permission. And no matter how much time passes, they don't lose weight. If anything, they get heavier. Even now I ask myself, was it really love? Was it love to hide who I was, to rewrite my beginning, to choose silence over truth? Or was it fear wearing the mask of love? Because it's easier to say you protected someone than to admit you didn't trust them with the truth. She'll never be able to answer that. Not to me. Not anymore. But that's what letters like these do. They speak after the voices have gone quiet. They fill the silence with everything that was never said. And sometimes that's more painful than the absence. But here's what I've learned, and maybe it's something you need to hear too. Some stories are buried not because they're shameful, but because they're too important. Because the people who lived them didn't know how to carry them. Or because they thought the world wasn't ready. Or maybe because they believed we weren't ready. But I was ready, not to hurt, not to be betrayed, but to finally understand. That letter didn't give me peace. Not at first. It gave me confusion, anger, pain, identity loss. But over time, it began to give me something else, something harder to name, something deeper, maybe clarity, maybe compassion, maybe the kind of forgiveness that isn't loud or clean or complete, but still real. This wasn't just a historia impactante. This was my life. My rewritten beginning, my hidden truth, finally breathing out loud. And maybe you've got a letter like that too. Maybe it's not on paper. Maybe it's a memory, a voice you still hear, a secret no one ever said out loud, a version of your past you've never dared to question. But it lingers, doesn't it? It lives in the background, waiting to be opened. You don't need to burn it. You don't need to erase it. You don't even need to understand it completely. But maybe you need to tell it. Because stories, even the painful ones, can heal when they're finally told. And if you've made it this far, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to be reminded that your truth matters too, that silence doesn't have to last forever, that maybe, just maybe, your story isn't over. It's just waiting to be read by you. So here's what I ask. If this touched you in any way, if something inside you stirred, even if you can't name it yet, leave a comment below. You can write, I felt this, or just drop, or type the phrase that stuck with you most. But say something. Let this be the start of a space where truth doesn't have to hide, where memorias dolorosas become bridges instead of wounds, where letters don't burn, they unfold. And remember, this wasn't the only letter. There's one more, one that no one was ever supposed to find. Subscribe right now. This isn't just a channel. It's a place where hidden stories are finally given a voice. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, there are no letters that truly burn, Only truths waiting for the courage to be told. I'm your channel name, and the next story could be yours.